So you may have started your sim racing using one of these. Most recent times you might have used one of these. But what I'm here to talk about today is the a new shifter I've purchased. It's been around a while. I sort of stumbled across it on YouTube, and this is made in Japan by Frex. You may or may not have heard of this company. Seems a bit of a mid-range company, if I'm honest. I've currently got quite a few shifters on my rig. To name just two of them, this is the sequential shifter by Huizenveld. A simple case of sequential type of shifting. And the other one I've got is probably a fairly popular one amongst sim racers, I would think. I've actually got a picture that's suitable for the software, but it's the Fanatec H pattern, and I'll show you a picture of that later on my rig. So today is basically talking shift. That shift as in shifters. And more importantly, we're going to be talking about this one. This is my newest addition, a H pattern aluminium micro switch, if you like, 6-speed shifter. You'll see where it is on my rig in a minute. I've currently got, like I say, 3 shifters on my sim rig, and there's a reason for that. So I've got like 2 H patterns. The Fanatec one is 7-speed with reverse. The Frex is 6-speed with reverse. Mine is very slightly different to the picture you see there, because that's the only picture I could find that was close enough. But we'll go through the differences when I show you the actual shifter. And then we've got the Huizenveld sequential shifter. Again, there's a reason why I've got these placed on my rig in this particular position. So without further ado, I'm going to jump onto the best I can, my GoPro, and give you a little bit of a overview of perhaps where my shifters are mounted, and then we're going to talk about this Frex shifter and my thoughts. It's not a proper out and out review. It's just that I've been using this now for probably about 3 weeks, and I've sort of gone between the other shifters, well, the other H pattern anyway, but the Fanatec H pattern and this one. I'm going to give you my my thoughts about what I think. So let me just sort my camera out. So as you can see there, I've got my Huizenveld sequential shifter. Fairly straightforward. This is on the right hand side of my rig. Main reason for that is I do drive a lot of historic F1 cars, and the shifter is just about in the right place to do the sequential shifting up and down as you would in some of the older F1 cars. Very easy. Very positive. It does just move back and forward. Comes with a variety of shifter knobs. I chose the longer one just because I know some of the older F1 cars do have the round, like an offset round headed gear shift knob. I particularly liked that one. So that one was on back, I don't know, a couple of £100 or more. This one was, I think it was perhaps, I can't think off the top of my head, if you look online, 240 maybe, something like that. The next shifter is everyone's, well, if you've got a Fanatec gear, you're probably going to have this one. And here's my Fanatec H pattern and sequential shifter. The reason I bought the previous sequential shifter is so I don't need to keep changing this one. Although it is only a switch, it's very, very easy to use. Again, this is on the right hand side of my rig to simulate. Again, I drive a lot of F1 historic F1 cars, and the shifter is on the right hand side of the cockpit. Also, when driving other models of cars using shifters, and they are left hand drive cars, this gives a little bit more authenticity of changing gear. Now the shifter, basically, I would say is kind of the, how can I say, the idiot, no, that's not, I want to use that word anyway, but it's the idiot's guide to H pattern shifting. It's pretty easy to do. It's very secure. It goes in, you can adjust the tension, but it's very difficult to miss shift, if I'm honest. It's okay. I like it. It's probably the best. I would say it's still entry level in the Fanatic ecosystem. Comes with a variety of gear shifts. The only thing I've changed on this one, you can't really see it from there, but the actual shaft is an aftermarket shaft, and it's a lot shorter than the one you get standard with the shifter. It just gives it a bit more of a shorter throw. I do like that. This is also, like I say, it's on the right hand side of my rig. The only downside is it is a little over to the right. I've got to try and think about how to mount it more to the left, which would in turn move the Huizenveld sequential shifter more to the left, so closer to me. But I sort of make do. It's kind of, because the shifter's so easy to use, that I've adapted. I just adapt to it. So they're the two shifters on the right hand side of my rig. We're now going to move over to the Frex H pattern, which, as you're probably aware now, I've installed on the left hand side of my rig. Okay, so I've you can just make out my hand here. I've just literally sat inside the rig. I had to climb in on the other side. It's a bit of an ordeal, but I'm not sure I can move my camera, so because it's on a tripod. But anyway, this is all made out of aluminium. It costs me £340 to get from Japan, where Frex are, to the UK. I think I've used it for probably, I think I might have said 3 weeks in the beginning, in the intros, probably close to 2.5 weeks, if I'm honest. It's placed on the left hand side of my rig to simulate right hand drive cars like they are in the UK, and a left hand shifter. It's slightly extended. I've got the extended one. There's like a nut, an elongated nut here, hex nut, on a different specification. You can get this a lot shorter, but I decided to go with the longer one. And other additional specs you can have on this, don't know if you can see, but sort of about there, if I point there, there's some holes there. There's 4. You can have 4 extra buttons to put on to map to what you want to map them to. But my main reason for not having them, well, it's a little bit of expense. It's not that much more expensive. It's not worth worrying about if you're going to spend £300 odd on a shifter. However, I was more thinking of how many buttons are there in real shifters in real life. I know it's only a simulated aspect of it, but however, I wanted to try and keep it as realistic as I can. So it's a 6-speed H pattern with reverse. So you can see the linkage here looks a bit complex, but it is only a micro switch, a couple of micro switches inside this box. I'm not going to take it apart now, but it does move. It's a bit noisy. I might have to try and do it without
grabbing hold of the shifter. So that's sort of over there, and that's that way. It does go quite a way over, so that goes into reverse. So we go into first gear. You're gonna have to sort of kind of bear with me. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And the one thing you'll notice, so it's probably not by design, if I'm honest, it's a much more difficult shifter to shift into gears. I have driven a number of competitive racing cars over the years, I would say, on track days and other experiences, and had the very fortunate experience of driving an open wheeler at a circuit recently. Although the H pattern is very much on the right hand side, it was a H patterned racing car, but putting the gear shifter into gear 1, gear 2 and so on and so forth, it wasn't as straightforward. It was more like this. I wouldn't say exactly like this, but you can see you've got to kind of know where it is. There's no real gate as such. The Fanatec shift is very, very easy in comparison. The only downside, it can be a little bit noisy. There's a couple of downsides to this. If I move this across, so that's its throw over to first. It's quite a long throw for first gear, and you've got to keep it pressed there. So that's absolutely fine. It feels fine, and it works. But when you go to third, you've actually got to. It's actually quite a throw. So it can quite easily, when you're not looking, or in the heat of the moment, if you're racing online or just racing your sim in general, you can accidentally miss third gear, and I've done it a few times. It's more of a feel. You can hear that, can't you? There. I mean, I must admit, fifth is quite tricky because there's a bit of extra resistance there where it goes across for reverse. So I think once you get to that far, that's it. But it doesn't stop there. It sort of, there's a bit more resistance as it pulls. There's spring operated in there, so the springs more tense. What's the word I'm looking for? Tension. So the more tension to get it across, which I suppose, you know, over time those springs could weaken, but you can buy the springs. You can buy various different spares for this from the same company, so it's probably one of my sort of things I might buy going forward, just so I've got some spares. They're very, very inexpensive, of something like 130,000 million billion yen, which is probably somewhere around £4. The other additional part I had, you can probably make out a bit of it here, is because it's mounted to my rig via this bracket here, and there's a similar bracket the other side. Now what I'm going to try and do is move the camera. This is where it all goes wrong. You can just see my feet, but ignore my socks. Checkered flag socks, always good. Anyway, I don't know if you can make out this bit here. This is the bracket on the other side of the shifter. If you don't have the brackets, it's got like a table clamp design here. Typically that would go onto your profile or anywhere on a table even, and it seems quite a solid fixing point, if I'm honest with you. But I decided, because I was having it on the profile rig, I decided to buy the additional mounting bracket. And it doesn't, I don't know if you can see there, but it doesn't fit flush with the rig there. And I've loosened things off. I cannot get that bit flush, even though if I move the camera down, that bit there, which is here, is pretty much as good as flush with the profile. So yeah, I'm not too sure why it's doing that, but that one there comes away, and Even the bracket almost seems like there's an extra bracket that you have to put on this that you get with the kit, and it just seems in the wrong place. And I've looked, it's not so much something I've done even. I mean, it's possible. I'm just looking at this bracket now. I'm not about to take it off because it was an absolute biatch to put this in, if I'm honest. There is a possibility that this bracket would it go the other way? I'm not so sure it would. I'll flick that over. No. I don't think I can forget that bit against here. I'm just trying to work out in my physics head, which isn't working. So no, there's obviously something. It might be something I've done. Anyway, it does make the shifter very slightly flex, but not so much. You know, if I shift, it's absolutely fine. Now there's a. I'm trying to move the light as if it's a bloody camera, but down there you can see I'm just above it, and I'll point that bit there. Well, that nut you take this nut off, and in there's a little grub screw, and you can wind the grub screw down a fraction, and I mean a tiny amount, and it will tighten this up. If you have it too tight, you can hardly move it. If it's too loose, it almost falls out of gear. Yeah, so what do I think overall? Well, I think it's for me personally, it's absolutely brilliant. If you want a left hand, well, you can. Let me just start again. It depends where you mount your shifter to what you drive more often. Now, the reason I've got 3 shifters is clearly to cover 3 different aspects of driving. Then you've got your paddle shifters on the wheel. The sequential H pattern on the right, H pattern on the left. What was the song on it? Jokers to the left of me. I can't remember the words. The most famous song in history ever. Clowns, isn't it? Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Anyway, I'm digressing. Don't know what the hell I'm talking about now. But I've got 3 different aspects of shifters, 4 including the paddles on the wheel, and it allows me to integrate that with whatever car I'm driving. For example, Assetto Corsa, the original Assetto Corsa, all the shifters are mapped to the game, so you just have to pick the shifter up when you get whichever car, left or right hand drive, H pattern or sequential or paddle, and away you go. Nice and easy. I'm not so sure it's quite as easy as that on Ultima Ballista 2. I think you've got to actually map the controls separately, so you might have to have 2 different profiles, H pattern left, H pattern right, depending on the wheel you use. As far as I'm aware, there's no single-seater car. I'm going to make a bold claim here, it's probably wrong anyway, in the world, which has a shifter on the left. If it does, I have never seen it, and if somebody wants to put me right on that, absolutely fantastic, I'd like to know. I could Google it, but I can't be bothered. So, yeah, so all single-seaters, to the best of my knowledge, are on the right. Cars can vary from left or right, and then you've got your paddle shifts. So that's the main reason. So I think all in all, even if I quickly added up my shifters, so we got like 220 for the Fanatec, that's 360, 460, 560, that's over 600, and then 200 odd for the Husenvelt. That's nearly £800 worth of shifters. I mean, but it's bought over quite a number of years. We're talking probably about even this setup. Although the chassis is new, the rig, I've had the Fanatec shifter for a long time. Probably about 2.5, no more than that probably. Getting on for 5 years now with the shifter. So over a period of 5 years, I've spent £800 on shifters for something which is pretend racing. But it's what I like doing. I've done it all my life. You know, you get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I quite like the what's the word I'm trying to say? I'm not very good with words today. Intricacy of this Frex shifter. I did get a carbon fibre gear shift knob as well. It was, cheap, of 350 billion zillion zen, and that was probably about 15 quid. And it's a nice bit of kit, but I haven't put it on yet because I'm still playing around with this shifter. I'm still undecided about the fitment of it. I'm not so sure. I mean, and that's the side of the rig probably flexing within, but yeah, I think overall it's a very, very decent shifter. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There is an additional part to the shifter which won't do me any good, and it's a wire which goes from the shifter to the set of pedals. Now you have to have Frex pedals as well, which wouldn't suit me anyway, because I use most of my gear also on console, and I wouldn't better use this on a console as such. But there's a set of pedals from Frex that match the shifter. They also do a wheel as well, but there's a wire that goes from the shifter to the pedals, and namely the clutch pedal, which can be set up so that you can actually it won't shift if you haven't got your clutch right down, and that's a pretty good. I think that's a good idea. But then again, you haven't really got that double bite feel of the clutch on most sim equipment. Fanatic V3 pedals, I think, has that, and there's probably other pedals which simulate that, but invariably it's just a very linear pedal, to be honest with you. So you can set the bite point on how sensitive you want your pedal within the sims anyway, but practice your heel and toe, and which is why I've got my pedals, my brake and my throttle a bit closer together and away from my clutch pedal. But yeah, that's a separate subject. But that's enough of this now. That's my thoughts on the Frex shifter, my H pattern, six speed with reverse, and just comparing the other two shifters that I use for my sim racing. Anyway, that's it for now. I've done enough talking. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts and my process, and I will see you very soon. Bye for now.